This is The Metaphysics of War by Julius Evola. Chapter 6, Army as Vision of the World. Originally published on the 30th of May, 1937 as Suela Milzia quale visione del mondo in diorama mensile il regime fascista. Undoubtedly, the new fascist generation already possesses a broadly military, warlike orientation, but it has not yet grasped the necessity of integrating the details of simple discipline and psychophysical training into a superior order, a general vision of life. The ethical aspect. One begins to see this when one studies our ancient traditions, which, certainly not by chance, so often used a symbolism taken from fighting, serving, and asserting oneself heroically to express purely spiritual realities. The group of initiates were called stratos, or army, in Orphism. Miles expressed a degree of the Mithraic hierarchy. Symbols of agony always recur, by which they mean reoccur, in the sacred representations of classic Romanity, and passed in part to Christian asceticism itself. But here we shall deal with something more precise than mere analogies, namely the related doctrine of holy war, of which we have spoken previously in our books, as well as in these pages. We shall confine ourselves to the ethical field and refer to a special and central attitude calculated to bring about a radical change of meaning in the whole field of values, and to raise it to a plane of manliness, separating it completely from all bourgeoisie attitudes, humanitarianism, moralism, and limp conformism. The basis of this attitude is summed up in Paul's well-known phrase, vita est militia super terram. It is a matter of conceiving the being here below as having been sent in the guise of a man on a mission of military service to a remote front. The purpose of this mission not always being directly sensed by the individual, in the same manner that one who fights in the outposts cannot always form a precise idea of the overall plan to which he contributes, but in which inner nobleness is always measured by the fact of resisting, of accomplishing, in spite of all, what must be accomplished, in the fact of not doubting, not hesitating, in the fact of a fidelity stronger than life or death. The first results of this view are an affirmative attitude with respect to the world, assertion and, at the same time, a certain freedom. He who is really a soldier is so by nature, and therefore, because he wants to be so. In the missions and tasks which are given to him, consequently, he recognizes himself, so to speak. Likewise, the one who conceives his existence as being that of a soldier in an army will be very far from considering the world as a vale of tears from which to flee, or as a circus of irrational events at which to throw himself blindly, or as a realm for which carpe diem, which is translated as Latin for seize the day, carpe diem, constitutes the supreme wisdom. Though he is not unaware of the tragic and negative side of so many things, his way of reacting to them will be quite different from that of all other men. His feeling that this world is not his fatherland, and that it does not represent his proper condition, so to speak. His feeling that, basically, he comes from afar, shall remain a fundamental element which will not give rise to mystical escapism and spiritual weakness, but rather will enable him to minimize, to relativize, or to refer to higher concepts of measure and limit, all that can seem important and definitive to others, starting with death itself, and will confer on him calm, force, and breadth of vision. The social aspect. The military conception of life, then, leads to a new sense of social and political solidarity. It goes beyond all humanitarianism and socialism. Men are not our brothers, and our neighbor is not, in a way, an insolent concept. Society is neither a creature of necessity nor something to be justified or sublimated on the basis of the ideal of honeyed universal love and obligatory altruism. Every society will instead be essentially conceived in the terms of the solidarity existing between quite distinct beings, between one determined to protect the dignity of its personality, but nevertheless united in a common action which binds them side by side, without sentimentalism, in male comradeship. Fidelity and sincerity, with the ethics of honor to which they give rise, will thus be seen as the true basis of every community. According to ancient Indo-Germanic legislation, killing did not appear to be as serious a fault as betrayal, or even mere lying. A warlike ethic would also lead to more or less this attitude, and it would be inclined to limit the principle of solidarity by means of those of dignity and affinity. The soldier can regard as comrades only those whom he holds in esteem and who are resolute to hold to their posts, not those who give way, the weak or the inept. Besides, the one who guides has the duty of gathering and pushing forward the valid forces, rather than wasting them on concern and lament for those who have already fallen, or have yielded, or have landed themselves in the cul-de-sac. Sense of Stoicism. However, the views we put forward here are most valuable in terms of inner strengthening. Here we enter in the field of a properly Roman ethics, with which the reader should already be familiar through those excerpts from classical authors which are published on a regular basis in the diorama. As we have stated previously, we speak here of an inner change, by virtue of which one's reactions towards facts and life experiences become absolutely different, and, rather than being negative, as they are generally, become positive and constructive. Stoic Romanity offers us an excellent insight into this, provided that it is known as it really was, as true and indomitable life affirmation, far from the preconceived opinions which endeavor to make us see in the Stoic only a stiffened, hardened being become foreign to life. Can one really doubt this when Seneca affirms the true man as a superior to a god, since while the latter is protected by nature from misfortune, man can meet the latter, challenge it, and show himself superior to it? We have here an editor's note. Seneca, who lived from 4 BC, that's before Christ, to 65 AD, or Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, was a noted Roman writer and philosopher. He committed suicide after being accused of involvement in an assassination plot against the Emperor Nero. That's the Roman Emperor Nero. So I will reread that previous sentence now that we have been provided with some context. Can one really doubt this when Seneca affirms the true man as superior to a god, since, while the latter is protected by nature from misfortune, man can meet the latter, challenge it, and show himself superior to it? Or when he calls unhappy those who have never been so, since they have never managed to know and to measure their force. In these authors precisely, one can find many elements for a warlike system of ethics, which revolutionizes completely the common manner of thinking. A very characteristic aspect of this viewpoint is this: the one who is sent off to a dangerous place curses his fate only if he is a vile person. If he is a heroic spirit, he is instead proud of it, since he knows that his commander chooses the worthiest and strongest for any risky mission and for any post of responsibility. leaving the most convenient and secure posts only to those whom he basically does not hold in esteem. This same thought is appropriate to the most dark, tragic, discouraging moments of life. It is necessary to discover in these either a hidden providentiality or an appeal to our nobility and superiority as men. Who is worthy of the name of man and of Roman? Seneca writes precisely. Who does not want to be tested and does not look for a dangerous task? For the strong man, inaction is torture. There is only one sight able to command the attention even of a god, and it is that of a strong man battling with bad luck, especially if he has himself challenged it. This is a wisdom, besides, which is taken from ancient ages and finds a place even in a general conception of the history of the world. If Hesiod, before the spectacle of the Age of Iron, the dark and deconsecrated age, which is identified as the last age, exclaimed, "If only then I did not have to live in the Age of Iron, but could have either died first or been born afterwards." And we have here a note for that. Hesiod, Theogony, in brackets, Cambridge, Harvard University Press, / the Loeb Classical Library, 2006, pages 101 and 102. Okay, so that's the source of that quote, to which I will reread from the top of the sentence. This is a wisdom besides, which is taken from ancient ages, and finds a place even in a general conception of the history of the world. If Hesiod, before the spectacle of the Age of Iron, the dark and deconsecrated age which is identified as the last age, exclaimed, "If only then I did not have to live in the Age of Iron, but could have either died first or been born afterward." A teaching peculiar to the ancient Indo-Germanic traditions was that precisely those who, in the Dark Age, resist in spite of all, will be able to obtain fruits, which those who lived in more favorable, less hard periods could seldom reach. Thus, the vision of one's life as membership within an army gives shape to an ethic of its own, and to a precise inner attitude which arouses deep forces within. On this basis, to seek membership in an actual army, with its disciplines and its readiness for absolute action on the plane of material struggle, is the right direction and the path which must be followed. It is necessary to first feel oneself to be a soldier in spirit, and to render one's sensibility in accordance with that, in order to be able to do this also in a material sense subsequently, and to avoid the dangers which, in the sense of a materialistic hardening and overemphasis on the purely physical, can otherwise come from militarization on the external plane alone. Whereas, given this preparation, any external form can easily become the symbol and instrument of properly spiritual meanings. A fascist system of ethics, if thought through thoroughly, cannot but be directed along those lines. Scorn for the easy life is the starting point. The further points of reference must still be placed as high as possible, beyond everything which can speak only to feeling, and beyond all mere myth. If the two most recent phases of the involutionary process which has led to the modern decline are first, the rise of the bourgeoisie, and the second, the collectivization not only of the idea of the state, but also of all values and of the conception of ethics itself, then, to go beyond all this and to reassert a warlike vision of life in the aforementioned full sense must constitute the precondition for any reconstruction. When the world of the masses and the materialistic and sentimental middle classes gives way to a world of warriors, the main thing will have been achieved, which makes possible the coming of an even higher order, that of true traditional spirituality. This ends Chapter 6. Chapter 7, Race and War, will be next. This recording is being made on Thursday, November 22nd, 2018 at 7:57 p.m. And we are now concluding here. So, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful evening.